The NFL world was shocked, rocked, turned upside down, and shaken yesterday by a renege of a deal by the Baltimore Ravens, who had previously agreed, let me preface that, agreed to trade for edge rusher Maxx Crosby. Now, on surface, there are occasions when deals do get rescinded. But this is a different situation for the Baltimore Ravens. And we're going to get into what really happened. You see, either in yesterday's video or either yesterday's live, I said that EDC and the Ravens had panic bought on a Maxx Crosby deal. It's the traditional fear of missing out. You see, what the Baltimore Ravens understood, I think it was last Friday, maybe Thursday, is that their defense had not been good in a couple of seasons. Their pass rush has not been good in a long time, regardless of leading the league a couple of seasons ago in sacks. They just did not have a number one level guy who could go get the quarterback, close out drives, and get the defense off the field. It's just what it was. The Baltimore Ravens had made numerous upon numerous attempts to get an edge rusher. They had made a trade many seasons ago for an edge rusher. They had drafted lots of edge rushers, excuse me. They had brought in vets, and all of them in their own way performed, but never that guy who you knew you had to fear and game plan for. So when they heard all the way back to mid-season last year that the Raiders may be willing to trade Maxx Crosby, their ears perked up, just like many teams around the league. But Maxx Crosby ended last season with an injury, and then he had surgery, I believe it was January. So going into a Maxx Crosby trade deal, what did the Baltimore Ravens know? Just like every other team who was interested in Maxx Crosby, what did they know? That he had ended the season with an injury. And prior to ending last season with an injury, he had multiple surgeries over the course of his career. So you could lean into the idea that a high collision player, an aggressive, violent player like a Maxx Crosby, is going to be prone to injury. And so there was many people who talked about Maxx Crosby would not be ready to go and cleared until maybe June or July. This information was out there prior to the Baltimore Ravens making a trade agreement for Maxx Crosby, which would yield the Raiders 2 first-round picks. But the Baltimore Ravens, just like I said they typically are, they were desperate and did the deal anyway, knowing that the dude was coming in injured. But this is par for the course for the Baltimore Ravens under the EDC era because they've drafted players such as a David Ajabo who had torn his Achilles. They knew he would not be ready for the season. They drafted Andrew Voorhees late in the draft, knowing that he would not be ready. So their love affair with injured players is not brand new. So them making a trade for an injured, coming off surgery, Maxx Crosby was not a surprise. But I made a video a couple of weeks ago and I said, hey, the Baltimore Ravens should not make any trade, especially one for Maxx Crosby. Not because he's not elite, not because he's not a premium edge rusher, but because of the cost. Not only would it yield the Raiders 2 first-round picks, but what it would mean for the Baltimore Ravens cap space. and the trade went down anyway. And immediately the Baltimore Ravens went from $18 million in cap availability to 10 to 12 million dollars over the cap, which meant they would have to go into immediate restructure mode or extension mode or cut wave release mode. And you saw from that trade up until this deal was rescinded, they hadn't done anything other than sign John Simpson. So they did not make the cap space to get under the league requirement for the league year to start. The reason why I say this is buyer's remorse, or some people may call it cold feet, because they're the same thing. Buyer's remorse and cold feet are essentially the same thing. Buyer's remorse is when you make a purchase, and then immediately after you make that purchase, you regret spending that money. Cold feet is when you've made a decision, and then sometime after making the decision, or when the day where balances have to be totaled, you realize, man, this may be too big for me. This may be too much of a decision for me. So they're essentially the same thing. So whether it's cold feet or buyer's remorse, the Baltimore Ravens still arrive at the same point. Here's the deal. I came in the door in 2023 when I first just started talking about the Baltimore Ravens, and I had a disclaimer that Baltimore Ravens needed to move on from EDC and John Harbaugh. During this season, I said, hey, the Baltimore Ravens needed a clean sweep. The clean sweep would have included EDC and John Harbaugh going. Now, they did remove John Harbaugh, as we all know, as the league knows. And John Harbaugh is up there writing checks, essentially, in New York, right? Creating Ravens North. But EDC was left here. He was left to kind of figure it out. And he's done nothing more than do what he's always done, which is make a mess. The Baltimore Ravens cap situation is a mess. The dead money situation in Baltimore is a mess. Having multiple contracts with void years, which is going to mess up future years in contract negotiations and things of that nature. It's a mess. Everything he's done is a mess. Let's go deeper. The Baltimore Ravens offensive line is what? You said it, a mess. The Baltimore Ravens wide receiving room is what? A mess. The Baltimore Ravens tight end room is what? A mess. The Baltimore Ravens quarterback situation is what? A mess. Why is the quarterback situation a mess? Because your star quarterback sits with a $75 million cap hit the next 2 seasons. Now, it's only a mess because you need that money to build the team. But EDC has not shown an ability for real to build a team. So having the cap availability does not mean a thing to me at this point. The plot thickens. Edge rush position, which the Baltimore Ravens have not had nailed down in the EDC era, a mess. Linebacking situation, a mess. Why is the linebacking situation a mess? You got Roquan Smith and Teddy Buchanan is expected to be on schedule for training camp because you have a $100 million linebacker who does not yield a return on that investment. The Baltimore Ravens secondary is a mess. Why? Because you got 3 first rounders right now in house with one of the worst secondaries in the league per last year's performance. And you have a huge question mark at the other starting cornerback position. And you have a Marlon Humphrey who has a $26 million APY this year, and his contract no longer yields a return on that investment. Now, you can keep saying that EDC is a good general manager. We can keep trying to give him a pass. We can say, now let's see him cook without John Harbaugh. But dadgum, looks like he's burning down the dadgum kitchen. Forget just the kitchen. Looks like he's burning down the whole house. If this is cooking, EDC, turn the stove off, brother. Cook with no more grease. Just get a loaf of bread, get some peanut butter and jelly, and spread that. Spread it. Stop cooking because you're making a mess. You see, Let me say this very, very clearly. I don't have any lights on, so I'm looking super dark right now. But I am dark, so whatever. But here's the deal. Hear me. Lean close. You know what? Lean this close. EDC needs to be fired immediately. Now, let me say it again. Eric DaCosta, the current general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, needs to be fired soon, because we don't have any evidence that he's going to get it right this free agency. We don't have any evidence that he's going to kill it in this draft. We don't have any evidence that he can get a deal done that does not put the Baltimore Ravens in future cap hell. We don't have any evidence of that. None. I'm not sure how he steps in front of a microphone over the next 48 hours to explain this Maxx Crosby debacle away. Because here's the truth. With understanding, I understand the report that the Dallas Cowboys doctor was in on this examination. That means nothing to me. You know why? Because we already understood there are plenty of reports out there that would indicate that Maxx Crosby was known not to be ready for any type of trade or any type of offseason activity prior to anybody making a trade, prior to anybody showing interest. So this is not new. And why does EDC need to be fired? Well, here's your answer. Because what team right now or in the future wants to do a deal with this dude? Why? Not a man of his word, and this type of debacle puts the Vegas Raiders in a bind of sorts. I'm not a fan of the Raiders, but business is business. And if it's a deal, if it's a deal. I remember a day, now at 46 years old, I remember a day where two dudes could talk, shake hands, not no contract, not no text to have a paper trail, not an email to have documentation of an agreement, but they could just shake hands and stand on it. If I said I'm going to come through, so I live out in the country right now, so I'm going to use farming context. If I said on Saturday, March 20th, that's not a Saturday, but follow the example. If I said on Saturday, March 20th, that I'm going to come through and I'm going to buy 3 cows at the price of, let's go, $3,500 a piece, and we just shook on it, on March 20th, they would show up, the cows would be available, the money would be available, just on a handshake deal. But now, when you move in millions of dollars, when you're dealing in $1 million athletes, this is unacceptable. And the NFL world and other GM general managers are saying as much. Nobody's going to want to deal with the Baltimore Ravens if they're ran by Eric DaCosta. You see, I guess you could say there is a thought that the Baltimore Ravens are one of the best run franchises in all of the NFL. What's the evidence? What's the evidence? See, that's a historical context under Ozzy. And that's not saying Ozzy was a perfect general manager, but that really is a historical context. There is no evidence that the Baltimore Ravens, let me see if I can pull up this screen. It probably won't let me. There is no evidence that the Baltimore Ravens are well run in doing anything. We're one of the only teams who consistently has contract holdups with their star quarterback. We're one of the only teams that will overpay just because a dude had a breakout season. We're one of the only teams that struggle to retain talent, but then let talent pass by that we could attain. You see, the Baltimore Ravens, I've often said this, the Baltimore Ravens are slow decision makers because they stand in indecision. Indecision when you have two options, two decisions to be made, and you make none. And that's what we have right here. Eric DaCosta knew he shouldn't have made that move. He knew he shouldn't have. And as soon as the deal was done, critics came out and said the Baltimore Ravens overpaid for Maxx Crosby. Why? Because they was comparing the Maxx Crosby deal to what the Green Bay Packers did with Micah Parsons. Two different scenarios, two different players, two different age ranges, two different consequences. But the Ravens made the deal anyway. When they could have just stood still. They could have went out and got a Jalen Phillips. They could have went out if they wanted a pass rusher. They could have went out and got Jalen Phillips. They could have went out and got Odafe Owe. They could have went out and got Mafa. I hope I got his name correctly. I think who ended up in um, Green Bay. Or they could have said, you know what? We'll just wait like we always do. We'll just wait. We'll keep our picks. We'll just wait and see how free agency unfolds. Now they're in a situation. Not only did they panic buy on Maxx Crosby and then back out of the deal, now they're going to have to panic shop. What do I mean? What do I mean? Uh-uh. Think about it. Think about the irony. You jump out the window, right? And the reason why I use that term, jump out the window, because if you're going to enter a home or exit a home, it shouldn't be in the window or out of the window. It should be by a door. So that means you're doing it the wrong way. So the Baltimore Ravens jump out of the window, panic buy on Maxx Crosby, knowing that there is a Trey Hendrickson available in free agency at the time the tampering period started. There was a Jalen Phillips, an Odafe Owe, and other lesser known players. If you wanted to make a splash, and you could have made any of those deals without giving up your first round picks. But he jumps out there. And as soon as he gets on the other side of it, he was in panic. He was in panic. Now he's created a whole mess. A whole mess. And if I'm the Raiders, you know what I do? I take it on the chin. I go to Max. I say, you know what? If you still want to go, you can go. Because they're going to take a severe hit. Because if you got two organizations basically walking away from a Maxx Crosby deal, there's no first round picks going to be involved. If there is, it's going to be a future first rounder like they do in the NFL, excuse me, like they do in the NBA, where you might get a first rounder next year after I've reaped the benefits of having Maxx Crosby on my team for a year. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the Baltimore Ravens holler at the Raiders Nobody's going to report on it. Holler at the Raiders, say, you know what? If you guys still need to get rid of him, we'll give you one first, but it has to be the 2027 pick. I wouldn't be surprised. But the Raiders are going to have to take this on the chin. So what I do, I go to Matt and say, look, we honored you with the big time deal, 3 years, something like 100 million or something crazy. 3 years, 115. Let's go 4 years. You can get the same numbers. 4 years, you can still get that 115. But the goal would be to bring that cap number down. We'll front you your money in a signing bonus. And we want to give you all the way to training camp to be ready. That brings that APY down. It fixes a lot of things. And the Raiders have a premier edge rusher who they're going to give time to heal. They still walk into the draft with the number 1 overall pick. They still take Mendoza. And now that defense is even better, including including the free agents that they picked up. That's what I would do. Because before I wet my pants and panic sell on Maxx Crosby just because the Ravens backed out, and I know somebody going to start coming with some seconds and some thirds, I just sit still. I've already committed to him. Him coming back doesn't put me over the cap. I've already made deals. And the only deal I got to undo is to that the edge rusher that they gave $16 million to. They could back out of that deal before the day at 4 o'clock and still be straight. So I'm not even tripping. But back to the Ravens, EDC, tap out. You know, like they used to do it in WWE and old school WWF, when you get put in the chokehold or you get put into uh, the Scorpion Deathlock, which was Sting's move, or whatever it was, put you in that submission hole and you tap out. EDC, brother, you in a submission hole. You got the Baltimore Ravens in a stranglehold, and we're about to be choked out by your indecision, lack of ability to show acumen. See, I'm not saying he doesn't have acumen. Let me be super, super clear. I will never defame his acumen because he's definitely educated. He's definitely made a career in the NFL, rising up through the ranks and becoming a general manager. But right now, what we're seeing doesn't show acumen. This has been a mess. And for those of you who still rock with EDC, please don't bring me they the idea that they had to renege on the deal. Please don't try to explain it away, because this is habitual mess up by EDC. It's habitual at this point. See, part of the reason why we're so desperate for a pass rusher is because when we have guys on the table who've proven that they can do some things, we let them walk. All under EDC's watch. So Darius Smith had proven himself, let him walk. Matt Judon had proven himself, let him walk. And both of them went on to have productive careers in other places, even to the point where we wanted to bring Zadarius Smith back. And so I don't think it's an easy pivot just to turn around and try to make a trade for AJ Brown, because like I said, who's picking up the phone? EDC would have to pull his pants down once again and bear himself to do another deal. And that ain't happening. There is no AJ Brown deal coming unless we push a whole bunch more chips into the middle of the table. And I think he'll be gun shy, and I think other teams will be gun shy as well. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Trey Hendrickson, which is the easy pivot. I've seen a lot of people talk about Trey Hendrickson being the option. Here's the deal. it would make it too obvious of why the Baltimore Ravens backed out the deal. So I don't think Trey Hendrickson is the play. Now they may sign him. I'm not tripping. If they sign him, hopefully he's healthy and he can come in and he can do some things. But I think at this point, just go out and get two guys to do one job. Go out and grab a Bradley Chubb who's still on the market, who should come in um, probably in that $15 million range, and go out and grab Kelevon Chason, a guy who has rebuilt his career, former first rounder by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's been climbing and climbing over. Just go get both of them. It'd be the same kind of money you would have paid Maxx Crosby. You get a 2-for-1. That doesn't say it absolutely fixes the pass rush, but you get credible pass rushers. You mix them two in because we lost a couple of dudes, and then I think they're both upgrades over Cal Van Noy. So then you would look like Bradley Chubb, Caleb Von Chason. You would have Mike Green. You would have Tavius Robinson and the long forgotten Adisa Isaac. Now that's not anything that's going to wow, but both of those guys have proven that they could get to the quarterback. Just go get a 2-for-1 and maybe go out and get Durant at the cornerback position, cornerback out of the Los Angeles Rams, and go and get not necessarily David Njoku. David Njoku is cool, but there is, I'm gonna call him Chig because I can't pronounce his name, Chig. You, some of you who are football heads for real, and you deep in them trenches, and you know every player on every team. You guys know who I'm talking about. He's a tight end. Uh, he can be a monster at times. You know, he's a 50 catch, 600 yard type of dude. He's available. Juno Smith, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, is available. So there's a couple of options there. But most importantly, don't stop with, don't bring us um, John Simpson as the option on along that offensive line. Um, sign some people. Sign some people to fix that offensive line. Wyatt Till is still available. Don't lean on Emory Jones as the option or the only option at left guard. We don't have any evidence that he can do a 17 game season just yet. He's created a mess, man. The Baltimore Ravens are a worse team in a drastically worse team in 2 seasons with EDC burning down the house than they were when we started. The Baltimore Ravens needed a full change, and they failed to do it. EDC, put down the spatula, turn the gas off, take the pan off the eye. No more chopping. Wash the dishes, wipe the counters down, put the stuff in the garbage disposal, sweep the floor, mop if you need to, and quit making a mess. Ozzy, if this was your choice to replace you, I need you to mentor him because he needs some help navigating what he's doing right now. But until next time, we're going to be out.